On this video I'm going to take you through installing the ARB CKMA12 under the bonnet in my Prado 150 GXL 2021 model. I wanted to put a compressor under the bonnet to keep it out of the way, and it's there always when I need it, rather than carry one loose around in the back, get it in and out all the time, pain in the backside. So anyway, here we go. So for me, in this particular instance, I need three items. I need the CKMA12 compressor itself. I also need the pump up kit, and I'll show you why in a second, but all the accessories and pieces that come with that, and then you've got your air hose as well. And I need a specific mounting bracket, and that is the Kaon mounting bracket here. They do a specific bracket for the Prado 150. They do call it rear air compressor mounting bracket, bit confusion there, but it actually goes under the bonnet. So compressor in the box. I've started to put it together already, sorry, missed that piece, but just to show you that, okay, so the compressor that comes out of the box there, the T piece here, and this is a pressure switch, pressure sensing switch, and then your air connector. So those three pieces actually come in this box, okay? They don't come with the compressor. So obviously it depends how you want to connect, because you could put your air lockers on here, and you can use this in many ways. You could install it in the back of your vehicle and not need those, whatever. So in my particular case, I need those pieces and I need the pump up kit. Alright, so those are fitted here, and then on top of that I have the Kaon bracket. And then the Kaon bracket, as I said, is specifically for this vehicle, and in the box you get a couple of things. You get a switch bracket, switch and relay bracket. So what they suggest you do is, obviously you mount the switch for the pump in there, because your bonnet's going to be up, you're going to switch it on and off. You could put the switch inside, but I'm going to put the switch on the bracket by the pump, because I need to connect the air hose. So when I connect the air hose, I can press the switch. As well as that, we'll see later, you can actually attach the relay to this, and there is a little screw and a bolt, or a nut and a bolt inside the packet for attaching the relay by the looks of that. The other one is this lovely stainless steel bracket, and that'll fit in the back of the engine bay behind the airbox. And then obviously we've got some bolts, 3 bolts. It bolts down to the vehicle with existing studs in the vehicle through those 3 there. Alright, so let's get going with putting it together. So first off, we're going to connect the Kaon bracket to the compressor. In the kit itself, with the compressor, you get a fixing plate. We'll see what we're going to do with that in a minute. Looks like we get 2 sets of bolts, just standard bolts, and then these are recessed flatheads with a recessed point. I think they'll be useful for fixing through here and stopping it turning, because once these are in, you're not going to be able to get to the head of those anyway. So I'm guessing that's where they go. 4 washers and 4, looks like, locking nuts. That's great. Okay, so what we'll do is, I reckon we'll put the bolts through here, one in there, maybe one at a time, otherwise we might lose it. So this is going to go with the single piece at the back, so that will go in there like that. And I reckon we might use this bracket underneath for extra support. Just want to see if that recesses in there nicely. Yes, it does. So we'll put a washer on there, and then we will put the nut on there. Alright, so I will go through and do all those, and I'll get you back to that when I've finished. Okay, so I'm just trying to line it up. A bit of a difficult one for the camera angle, but I thought I'd take you in there and see what we're doing. So with the bottom plate, it's firm but not fully tight, so I've been able to move it if I need to. So there's not much clearance in here, and actually for the moment I've left the airbox on, because I want to see what the gap looks like in here. So if I get get you above here, sorry, I'm going to try and get you down there. So what I'm trying to show you is I've got a little bit of a gap here at the back of the air box, and obviously I want to be able to see if I can remove that without any issues. And then we need to check clearance at the back here as well, and then it's touching in the wiring harness. So I need clearance there. Now you can twist it on that bracket, which is quite nice, and that's why I've left the bolt slightly loose, so that you can actually turn the compressor, but leave them very firm so that you can just give it a gentle turn. So I'm just going to make sure it's not going to knock on anything there. Might just tweak it a little bit more, and that's it. And then the gap in here. So if you need to move the compressor in or out, there are actually a couple of hex bolts there and there. If you loosen those off, you can slide the motor inside this blue sleeve, and I've slid it very slightly to where I need it. You'll see at the moment it's look, it's about not quite 10mm from this line, but I guess it varies. You just got to try it out yourself. But again, keep it firm so you can move it when it's in situation. So what I'll do now there is just do a final movement, take it out, tighten up the bolts underneath, and then I can bolt it back in again. I'll also check that I can get the airbox on and off. So just tightened up the bolts underneath nice and tight. Also tightened up the these two. As you can see, this is where I managed to slide it in. See, it's a slight angle on the bracket, but that's what the adjustment I did inside. So the next step is to put the switch bracket on before we go in, and that basically replaces this bracket. The interesting thing is that they suggest you put the relay on there, but that's right next to the airbox. So not so sure about that one. Anyway, let's do the bracket first and see where we end up. So we'll just take these ones out, remove this bracket, need to hold it now. Maybe actually, if you're doing it, do this bracket before you do the bottom bracket, because you have to hold it and it's quite tricky. Anyway, live and learn. Hopefully you learn from what I've done. So what we're going to do now is take this one out, but hold it quite carefully because I don't want it all falling apart. It is all about to fall apart. This bracket goes all the way through. Bolt, sorry. This bolt goes all the way through. So the whole thing is going to come apart. So I need to hold it quite carefully. Very tricky this. Okay, so take that out. There's an O-ring on there. We want to get off, get the bolt out. So again, very tricky to hold this all in one go. Take that bracket off there. And that's going to go through there. That O-ring is going to go back on there. That's going to go back in there. And we'll have to just tighten it all up in a minute. And we've got it all around the right way. There we go. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is just line all this up, and then we'll adjust the position of the pump. Get one of those in. lined up. Okay, we'll tighten those up. Not sure torque setting on that, but it'll be 2 white knuckles. Oh, that slipped off. That's too many knuckles. There we go. Alright, now this one, we're just going to line it up where we want it. The air lockers we're not going to be using, so we don't have to worry about those. But if we think that the thing's going to sit in the vehicle, probably want it pretty much straight up. Once it's sitting there like that, I reckon we might just check it out in the vehicle again to see how that looks once it's in. Okay, so that's the Kaon bracket on with the switch. As I said, the relay there does not fit. I don't think the relay would fit there. They suggest you put it there. I don't think it would fit between there and the airbox. The airbox cover is going to hit that, so that will go in a loom. I'll tuck it around the back somewhere. Alright, so next job is to bolt it in. Okay, so fixed it finally in. A few tips here. So I left the airbox cover on. Could have taken it off, probably would have made it a bit easier. But as you can see, it's pretty tight. I've got a little bit of gap down the back here. There's a little bit of gap on the box, and then there's a clip right down there. I can actually, I'll put my hand round, sorry, just checking that you can undo it and then clip it back in again. I do need 2 hands to clip it back in. There we go, it's clipped back in again, so I can get to that clip for the cover for the airbox, which is important. Pretty tight up against the wiring loom, but it's not actually touching there. It is touching probably at the back, but there's no movement in it. It's not going to rub. It's pretty tight in there. I guess if you ever have to do any wiring through to the engine bay from the inside through the firewall, you're no longer going to, you're going to really struggle to get into these grommets now down here. But anyway, we'll worry about that when it happens. But certainly there's a lower grommet down there you're not going to get to anymore. Anyway, so yeah, it's in, it's solid. Couple of tips and tricks here. So these bolts that are fixed in the vehicle, the nuts, so I use a bit of blue tack in the end of my socket so I can lower it down, and that holds the nut in the end of the socket. You'll also notice that I put a bit of Loctite on those ones because I felt that probably they might need some, because they're not Nylox, they're just like that. And then we're good to go. So next job will be wiring, fitting the switch and getting the wiring done. So we'll move on to that. So we're now on to the wiring. I did do a separate video on wiring, but I will just take you through quickly what's what. So wiring kit, as I said, comes with the pump. Very comprehensive loom, and actually I've done a lot of work on it to make it a bit simpler for my situation. So here's the wiring diagram that comes. I'm sorry if the sun, hopefully that doesn't interfere with the picture. So you've got an initial loom and then a connector, which would often, if you want to put your switches inside, so your air locker locker switches plus your main switch, so you've got 3 switch points, they would go inside your dash. So obviously you've got to feed it through. So there's two separate looms with a connecting plug. And now what I've done is basically cut these plugs out and shortened that because I'm not going to the inside. The other thing I've done is I've taken out switch 1 and switch 2 because I don't have lockers, or I'm not going to use lockers in the loom. So it didn't really seem much point keeping that part of the loom. You don't have to do this, but you know what, you want a nice tidy job, less wires hanging about. And by that I mean, so this is all the wire that I've removed and I no longer need. So that was the extension piece, very thin long extension. Obviously cut the plug off one end, and you've got the other connectors at the other end, so where you've got the other plug there. So that piece has come off right off, saving that. So first job on the Prado, remove this cover, press the studs in and lift them out carefully, taking them all out. Okay, that's the last one. So this will come off here, it comes away. And so one of the best places to run the wire is actually, there's already a conduit running in front of the radiator. Hopefully it's the coolest part in front of the radiator, but there's a conduit there, and I've actually put in already a second conduit in there. So what I'm going to have to do is release that and then feed the wires across. Now the other thing I'm not sure about yet is whether I've got enough length here. So what we'll have to work out is what does the length look like. So that's going to get right across into there. Somewhere like that. Ooh, it's going to be pretty tight, but I reckon we might just make it without extending. If you do need to extend the wires, remember, use equal thickness or greater, for fairly obvious reasons. And the earth wire, I'm actually going to take the earth wire back to here, probably, rather than take it off another point this side, because it's all taped together, it keeps it all in one place. And also I've got a smart shunt running off my auxiliary battery, and that deals with the anyway, long story, but it deals with the earthing or the neutral side of it, so I don't want to interfere with that. So, and as these are both already in here, probably just take that straight across. Alright, so first job though will be to start looking at fixing into the actual pump itself, and we'll go around there and have a look. Before we start, obviously one thing we need to do is disconnect any supply once we start touching the electricals. So when we get to that point, we'll do that. So everything's back together now, just very quickly. So managed to run the conduit through in front of the radiator inside that original pipe that I had. So comes up to main battery. There are two negatives in there which actually join together into the same connector, and then obviously the positive. That radiator one, look, you slice your fingers off and do whatever, it's really difficult to tuck anything under there, but it's really worth the effort. I would say if you get to do this job, I would say the cable length was perfect, absolutely perfect, didn't need to cut it, didn't need to do anything with it, so they obviously go up there. And then coming back to just a couple of finish offs here. So I ended up turning the fuse and pushing it further down the side of the battery, so it got away from here. And I didn't actually explain that this particular configuration is part of a smart shunt, so I don't connect directly to the earth of my battery because it actually passes through the smart shunt. And I'll do a separate video on that because there's a whole story around battery monitoring. Anyway, so that's why I've got this bit of contraption, and I'm still in two minds of where it's going to end up. So I just built a bit of a contraption to move my earth off the main terminal there, which means it protrudes and obviously in the way. Anyway, shut up, I'll move on. So yeah, the cabling there, and as I said, back here everything's back now, airbox is back. I did manage to use the blue wire, which was correct, and put everything in there, and that works fine. And I'll try and show you down here with the lid back on the airbox to see that I do actually have just a little bit of room in there, as you can see now, and the clip, hopefully you can see down there, probably not, but it's right in there. You can actually just, I can get my hand under there to the clip there, so that's all good. Anyway, we'll move on now to give it a test. So let's give it a quick test. So the beauty of this is it's so simple. Now the engine's running, of course, so just pull up and just connect the ARB hose. That goes in there. Then the other end I'm using a Maxtrax Indeflate. I'll show you that in a minute. Anyway, so This has got a tyre valve on it, so I could connect it straight to a tyre with a gauge. Although this particular item, the Maxtrax does 2 tyres at once, and I can use that tyre chuck on the bottom of this now, which is quite useful. I can just put that on quickly, like that. Gives me a reading, and the beauty of this, if I want to remove air from both tyres at the same time, you just push the sleeve up. So that helps me drop the tyre pressures, both simultaneously at 2 tyres at once. Now we want to pump it up. We can just pump it up, and we can do it all without running around, which is what I love now. And I can just keep going until we get it back up to 40. And that's it. And obviously I can take that off. Need to disconnect the Maxtrax off there. So I'll just switch the engine off so that you can hear the final words to finish up the video. Just quickly, the Maxtrax, it's a dual inflate deflate device. There's a lot of other videos around on the internet around speed of inflating. Is it quicker than doing one by one? Yeah, look, debatable, but anyway, check it out for yourself. So the bottom valve here, as I said, is a valve, so it's like a tyre valve. So as I said, with the ARB connector, you can just connect straight to that, which as you saw was great. So when I'm doing the rear 2 tyres, because I can't reach the switch to switch it off, you can actually just pull this off and then check the reading here. The pump has obviously got a pressure switch in it, so the pump will switch off on its own once it reaches its internal pressure, so you don't have to run back to the switch each time, which is really useful. So I can just do that on and off. Obviously, as you saw on the front 2 tyres, I can do the switch one, which is a bit easier, but you can't with the rear ones because you've got this further down the car. Yep, so pros and cons of the Maxtrax. More hoses, more connecting up when you're at site trying to deflate, inflate. So for deflating, it's not as quick as pulling out the valve itself, but because you can do 2 at once, it's okay. To be honest with you, my feeling is you put this on the front 2 when you get out, and then I'll go and start on the back 2 with the valve remover and do those separately, because otherwise you're standing around waiting for the front ones. It's just stupid. Sort of almost you need a 4 one, but then there's too much hose to carry around. So yeah, pros and cons. I like the way it equalizes the pressure between the 2 tyres, so you're always going to be sure that both tyres that this is connected to are absolutely the same pressure, which is really nice. Look, it is easy once it's on, especially for inflating. I find it much better than the 1x1, definitely. And the pump seems to have been really good. So hope you found this video useful. Sorry if I waffled on too much, but bits and pieces hopefully you can jump to, and I'll put chapters in so that you can see what's what. Thank you for watching.